Subscribe for more mysteries, unsolved and unexplained.
Think about this quote for a second. A darker side of life. We're jumping right into the chilling reality of 1888 London today. Because before we can unravel history's most infamous cold case, we really have to understand the world where it happened. The East End was basically an alien landscape, a place where the rules of polite society just sort of vanished into the thick, choking fog. So, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to completely strip away the pop culture myths, the Hollywood embellishments, the centuries of gossip, the whole shebang. Instead, we're relying on pure historical facts to figure out the mechanics of these crimes. We're going to explore how this terror started and ultimately uncover the fascinating, deeply systemic reasons why Jack the Ripper completely evaded justice. Section 1. The Shadows of Whitechapel. The grim reality of 1888 London. Okay, to really understand these crimes, we have to view the location itself as our central character. 78,000. That's how many people were crammed into the tiny, roughly 1 square mile parish of Whitechapel. I mean, just imagine that for a second. We are talking about an environment of unimaginable poverty, severe overcrowding, and just absolute desperation. You had entire families living in single rooms and thousands of people sleeping in common lodging houses, literally paying a few pennies just for a spot on the floor. And honestly, this environment, it was the ultimate cover for a killer. Whitechapel wasn't laid out on some neat, predictable grid. It was a chaotic maze. Labyrinthine alleys, blind courtyards, unpaved streets with practically zero lighting. Now, add in the thick, blinding smog from coal fires and a highly transient population constantly moving in and out day after day. The killer didn't just operate in the shadows. The city itself acted as this massive, unpoliced escape route. Section 2. Genesis of the Terror. The autumn of 1888. Now, this terror, it didn't just slowly appear and linger for years. It was a rapid, escalating crisis that gripped the city out of nowhere. We call this brief, hyper-concentrated period the Autumn of Terror, and the sheer speed and unprecedented brutality of these attacks completely overwhelmed Victorian society. They were entirely unprepared for the concept of a modern serial killer. They just didn't have the psychological framework for someone who killed not for money, not for revenge, but just for the sheer compulsive act of it. Section 3. The Canonical Five. The Documented Victims. While there were definitely other attacks in the area around this time, historians and investigators generally agree on the Canonical Five. 5 women who undoubtedly suffered at the hands of the exact same killer. Put yourself in the shoes of a detective back in 1888, looking at this incredibly compressed time frame. Between August 31st and November 9th, the violence just aggressively ramps up. But it's that date right in the middle, September 30th, that truly sent the entire city into a blind panic. They called it the double event, 2 murders in a single night. And the crucial takeaway here is that this one night completely shattered any illusion of police control. I mean, it proved the killer was audacious enough to strike, get interrupted, actively seek out a second victim, and still vanish completely into the shadows before the police could even properly secure the first scene. It was this brazen display of capability, and it absolutely terrified the public. Section 4. Evading Victorian Justice. Why the killer walked free. So how exactly did he pull this off when half the police force in London was actively hunting him down? Well, when we contrast our modern expectations with the reality of 1888, the answer becomes painfully obvious. Today, we expect DNA profiling, CCTV tracking, fingerprinting, but back then, fingerprinting wasn't even adopted by Scotland Yard for over a decade. They couldn't even distinguish human blood from animal blood. The Victorian police were relying entirely on completely unreliable eyewitness testimonies, beat cops walking predictable, timed routes, and circumstantial evidence. They were quite literally fighting a ghost with their hands tied behind their backs. But it gets worse. It wasn't just a lack of science. Systemic failures rapidly derailed the whole investigation. You had these massive, bitter jurisdictional battles between the Metropolitan Police and the City of London Police. It was so bad that a crucial piece of evidence, a chalk message found near a bloody piece of a victim's apron, known as the Goulston Street Graffito, was ordered to be washed away by a high-ranking official before it could even be photographed. Why? Just to avoid a jurisdictional riot. Add to that crowds trampling all over the crime scenes, 0 centralized criminal records, and you have an absolute investigative nightmare. Then we absolutely have to talk about the media frenzy. Hundreds of hoax letters were just flooding the police stations, completely muddying the waters.
But one letter, which arrived in late September and started with "Dear Boss," changed everything. It was the very first time the killer signed off with a specific name. Most historians today believe this letter was actually a total hoax concocted by an ambitious journalist trying to sell papers. But, well, it worked. It gave the killer his infamous moniker and forever turned a horrific reality into sensationalized mythology.
And these systemic issues filtered all the way down to their ground-level tactics. Honestly, this will blow your mind. Their standard protocol mandated waiting for a police surgeon, moving the body to a local workhouse, and then literally washing the cobblestones cleaned immediately for sanitary reasons. Like, before any meaningful forensic analysis or spatial reasoning could even happen, they were literally scrubbing the crime scenes clean. Unbelievable, right? Section 5, an unsolved legacy, cemented in infamy.
Because the killer was never caught, the factual history effectively just ends, and the mythology completely takes over. Nature hates a vacuum, right? And the vacuum of truth left by the police's failure has been filled with countless theories over the last century. A lot of experts point to medical professionals or local butchers, noting that the killer possessed undeniable anatomical knowledge. But then you have about 15% of theories diving into these wild, sensational conspiracies involving high-ranking aristocracy, massive cover-ups, and even royalty. The total lack of closure means that literally anyone and everyone has been a suspect at some point.
So as we wrap up this explainer, we really have to ask ourselves a deeper question. We look back at 1888 and we shake our heads at the lack of streetlights and the lack of DNA testing. But with all our modern advancements, our 4K cameras, our forensic science, are we truly immune? Or are there still forgotten shadows, marginalized communities, and systemic blinders in our own modern cities that a determined killer could exploit today? It's definitely a sobering thought to leave you with. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Stay curious.